Welcome to Ancestral Recall. I'm your host, Eli Kaplan. This is a documentary web series that explores the 20 years past of Magic. If you're an older player, feel free to bask in the nostalgia. And if you're a newer player, check out some classic, interesting cards that may spice up your Cube, Commander, or other formats. Today's show's topic? Torment.
Overview.
Torment's a small set, the second set in the Odyssey block, and it has some of the weirdest numbers of any set when you look at the card breakdown. Check this out. Whoa, Nelly! Look at all those black cards! Torment packs had a hell of an as fan. So many black cards, and wow, let's say it, just up front, these were good ones. Odyssey was balanced between colors. Torment, not so much. Torment is the first set that takes the usual color balance of Magic and pushes it. It pushes that balance incredibly hard. It's only a small set, so it doesn't break the format, but this was the first set that intentionally unbalanced the color pie. Just look at the visual spoiler on Gatherer, see low for the links, and you'll see how black this set is. Green and white got only a handful of cards, and red and blue got a fair amount, but the as fan experience of opening a pack and seeing how many black cards there are was like no other. Ooh. When the draft format was Odyssey Torment, a lot of people wanted to cut black hard in packs 1 and 2 so they could get the hookup for the goods in pack 3. Check out some of the non-black cards that had text pertaining to black. Major Tarot exiled all black creatures. Cephalid Snitch, that lame guy who was probably going to get some stitches, he could remove protection from black from a creature that's so crafty only blue-black mages could kill it. Besides continuing Odyssey's signature mechanics, Flashback and Threshold, Torment added one more mechanic to the mix, and this one's a doozy. Madness.
Ooh, yeah! Digger! Freak out, freak out, freak out. Ooh, yeah! Check it out, I discard a card with Madness. I get an optional trigger that allows me to play the spell at the Madness cost instead of putting it in the graveyard. Hulk Hogan! This could be done at any time, so you had to be careful attacking with green mages with a discard outlet. Ooh, yeah! Because you could end up with a surprise, arrogant worm in your face. Lots of staple effects got a Madness Rider tacked on, with the Intercontinental Championship on the line.
Alright, enough of that. Lots of staple effects got a Madness Rider tacked onto it, such as things like simple draw a card for 1 blue, or Lightning Bolt. Torment had even more discard outlets than Odyssey did, and this was intentional so people could realize that Madness was worth their time. Story-wise, Torment, the continuation of Odyssey, focuses on Chainer, a novice summoner who brings out beasts and horrors out of the collective unconsciousness around him. Kamal, the protagonist of the series, knows that Chainer's an amiable sort of guy, even if he does work with psychic sludge like the bad slime from Ghostbusters 2. So when the Cabal corrupts Chainer and gives him free reign with a Mirari, thousands of horrors spawn and threaten to destroy everyone in Oteria, while other summoners' illusions disappear when they get knocked out. When Chainer thinks of something, it sticks around. So Kamal is the guy who has to slay his friend in order to save everyone else he knows and loves.
Standout cards! Oh yeah! Snap into a Slim Jim!
Okay, let's start off with the black commons. Black got some things it usually doesn't have. This set didn't have a Prodigal Sorcerer, but it did have Cabal Torturer, a guy who could ruin combat by shrinking opponents' creatures at will. It kept 1 toughness guys off the board, and as soon as he hit Threshold, it then turned into a Grizzly Bear killer. I loved drafting these guys back in the day, and Poppers Cubes should consider adding him. Crippling Fatigue was another all-star common, killing off a nuisance and then taking another out. It was part of a cycle of flashback cards that required a life payment as well as a mana payment to play from the yard. These days, most sets have bigger guys due to power creep, so this isn't such a big deal today, but in a cube with only old frames, I think you should have it in there. And before Oblivion Ring, there was Faceless Butcher. Faceless Butcher was an important removal spell that could hit black creatures so long as the attached 2/3 body stuck in play. A callback to Arabian Nights' Oubliette, this card was so iconic that saw it print in Time Spiral's time-shifted cheat. This was part of a cycle that temporarily removed an opponent's resource, giving it back once it was removed. This is definitely cube-worthy, but it's really lousy in EDH. Another solid black common was Mesmeric Fiend, which occupied one card in your opponent's hand as long as it was around, usually a removal spell. If your opponent needs one card for victory and doesn't have a way to get rid of it, Mesmeric Fiend is a solid play. The most famous card in this cycle is Laquatus' Champion, a 6/3 with pesky regeneration for a mere B. This card was the first card ever printed in the Russian language as a pre-release foil, and honestly, the foil is incredibly badass looking. This is the version you should be playing in your mid-power cubes. It isn't that powerful, but it's splashy and has amazing art. If you're a fan of Devour Flesh in Standard today, you probably want to have Chainer's Edict in your cube. Yeah, it's sorcery speed, which is a downside, but it also has flashback for 7, which is certainly relevant. And getting all that black mana wasn't that hard, thanks to... drumroll? Drummel. Cabal Coffers. Like Tempest Wasteland, this uncommon is the most valuable card in the set because it ratchets the mana up significantly as soon as you hit 4. This card's often played in formats with Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, where every land increases its output, even itself. To add to the goodness, Black also had an insanely brutal discard spell, Mind Sledge. Discarding 4 or 5 cards for 5 mana, well, the closest analog is Fugue, but that only hit 3. By the numbers, there's nothing like the spell except for Mind Twist, and Mind Twist was one of the biggest mistakes of all time. If you want people to go to monocolor, you want to put this in your cubes. Black also got a pseudo Wrath of God effect, Mutilate. This was an amazingly powerful mass removal spell and a major component of the mono-black control decks rampant at Pro Tour Osaka 2002. Its utility got neutered when it got reprinted in M13 though, as current creatures tend to be a bit beefier. There are a few other really relevant black cards in the set. John Friggin Rizzo, the greatest magic rant artist of all time, turned Icarid into an incredible force in Old Extended. Later tech like Bridge from Below and Narcomoeba made this deck obsolete, but it was the first Reanimator deck that didn't cast spells to bring back 1 or 2 guys, but just swarmed your opponents. Black also got another amazing 2-drop, Nantico Shade. This 2-drop Shade had the best stats on any Frozen Shade type creature ever. So when it was fueled by Cabal Coffers, wow did it hit hard. Okay, how about Chainer? The guy who ostensibly created many of these things? Well, his activated ability is merely fair. Okay, he gets to pull creatures from any graveyard to your side. And reanimating creatures from any yard, as opposed to just your own, is something Wizards doesn't care for much these days, so when they do allow it now, it costs only a bazillion manas. But, this is a fair card. Also, to feed our nostalgia, Black's original premier 5-drop flyer, Sengir Vampire, made a comeback in this set. I guess Baron Sengir's guys get around. It was sweet to get black-bordered versions of this guy, though. But as a rare, well, when you open this in the pack, some players got a little ticked. Blue got one of the most scary counterspells of all time, Circular Logic. This was the backup plan that caused Upheaval Psychotog players to keep 1 blue open after their endgame sequence. With a Madness outlet, such as Psychotog or Wild Mongrel, this was a virtual hard counter for 1 blue. It was one of the best counterspells of all time, despite its stats on paper. The best Madness deck in the tournament format of the time was Blue-Green Madness. Its 2 major discard outlets were 2-drops, Odyssey's Wild Mongrel and Aquamoeba. Now let's look at Aquamoeba. It could attack for 3, or sometimes it would play defense and get multiple Madness triggers by discarding 2 cards. So it'd stay the same. This isn't an auto-include in cubes like Mongrel is, but it deserves mentioning as a key tournament staple. If you want to make enemy blue mages cry, dial up Luan Cephalid Empress. She's not amused by the antics of Merfolk, and she will make your opponent dig up a removal spell or bounce spell if they ever want to play a fish again. Now that's authority. I also really like playing the blue discard outlet, Compulsion. Alright, this costs more than a Merfolk Looter and can't beat, but this enchantment is much harder to remove than a 1/1, so consider it for your cubes. Do you like drawing 4 cards? I do. Well, you can get this on the installment plan with Deep Analysis. This is a sweet deal in Pauper Cubes, and the EDH decks that mill everyone will definitely appreciate this. Back in the day, Deep Analysis was quite the tournament staple in both 40 and 60 card decks, since it combined well with discard outlets. 4 mana for a Dirtle spell is quite a bit, but if you like Dirtles in your cubes, Churning Eddy is for you. Eddy, Eddy, Eddy and the Magma Jets. Green's best 2 cards in Torment were Basking Rootwalla and Arrogant Worm. Now, Basking Rootwalla is just a fine 1-drop, or you get to play it for free with Madness. It turned extra green mana into extra pain. Now, Arrogant Worm, by contrast, forgoes the continual 2-mana payment and just demands 3 mana upfront with a discard outlet, but at the time, 4/4 with Trample was pretty big. We can compare it today with Loxodon Smiter, who is easier to cast and uncounterable, but the Smiter doesn't have Trample and can't be played at instant speed. So these 2 guys, along with Wild Mongrel, Narcomoeba, and Roar of the Worm tokens, provided one of the most popular aggro archetypes of its day. The deck was also super cheap. Red, now everyone will agree when they were playing at the time, red was consistently the worst color in Odyssey block, but this set did give it Grim Lavamancer. Now, Grim Lavamancer is a staple in Legacy red decks, or Modern in occasion, turning your fetch lands, spent thing your deck into 2 damage profit. If it hadn't been reprinted in M12 and the Fire and Lightning box set, and as a Judge promo, this guy would be much more expensive. Other than Fiery Temper and its bigger burn brother, Violent Eruption, Torment Red isn't going to offer you much in the way of cube cards, but these 3 cards count. Alright, as for white. Well, what does white get in the blackest set imaginable? How about the ability to make black cry? Since it and green had so few cards, instead of getting Broken Madness guys, well, okay, white got angry, ticked off, downright hateful. Now, Major Tarot, this rare, not too much to look at. 2/3 flying, okay, but he gets to clear every black creature on the board away, so that's pretty huge in limited formats, where you'd have 4 or 5 or sometimes 6 black drafters at a table. One of the stories from 2002's Pro Tour Nice was in Draft, where future Hall of Famers Scott Johns and Zvi Moshowitz had a particular draft strategy. They wanted white. They wore shirts with Tarot Faithful, with an arrow pointing to the white mana symbol and saying, hint, hint. Subtle, ain't it? The backs even quoted The Offspring, touting the pleasures of being a white guy. These 2 racked up quite a draft record, taking the least desirable color of the format and turning it into a metagame powerhouse. I contacted Zvi about this, and while he says today that his findings were wrong, and that blue was in fact the color he should have tried to signal, there is something to be said for signaling the second best draft deck in the format, where everyone knows what the best draft deck is. If you were a white drafter in Odyssey Torment, your hope payoff was Stern Judge. He had come to judge. This disciplinarian gave out karmic retribution, dealing tons of damage to black players without even entering the red zone. I too drafted this guy quite a bit in the format. Let's take a break, for the price is right. Dark Confidant? Torment isn't that hot as far as boosters go, but you know what the set's really good for? Bring your own sealed. If you ever wanted to run a deck that would very easily just run 1 color, rounding up 6 boosters of Torment, that's your set. It's not that the black cards are even all that bomb-like, but you're guaranteed a high amount of quality. Okay, it's time for the final verdict. If you watched my last show on Odyssey, you heard me complain that Odyssey didn't fuel enough aggressive decks. Torment was a key component in that new set, making Blue-Green Madness the best beatdown deck in the format. It was very cheap to build, and remains one of the best standard decks of all time that costs $50 or less. Now, I like the nature of color imbalance thematically, and it really was fun to draft. There was a lot of tension. Should I force black early on, or should I get out and go do something else? This was a fun drafting format, and there were some pretty awesome creatures. Now, I called Odyssey gimmicky, but those gimmicks of Threshold and really helped set up the real and fascinating scenario of color imbalance in limited play, which somewhat solved itself with Judgment, but Judgment brought up a host of other problems. And Madness is such a great mechanic in that it transforms the way we look at cards and how Magic is played. Blue-Green Madness was amazing in tournament play without being quite crazy go nuts like Affinity, another budget, super aggressive standard deck was. Odyssey may have set the stage, but Torment steals the show of this block. I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10, quite good. Yeah. Fractions, we went there. Thanks for watching, and I hope you give some Torment cards a shuffle soon. If you like this show, please hammer on that like button and consider subscribing. You can follow me on Twitter or track me down on Facebook or Modo. So tell me what you like or don't like. Next week, we'll be in deep contemplation before we sit in judgment. This is Eli Kaplan for Ancestral Recall, signing off. Good games and good luck.